minutes, a few dozen rounds, and 24 of the toughest men our nation has to offer. But that wasn't even the hardest part. Finding him was.
Killing Osama bin Laden is not just the story of finding one person and taking him out. It really is the story of the last 10 years of the United States learning how to fight a new kind of war.
A story where endless wrong turns, dead ends, and a bloodthirsty new enemy helped create a new kind of war. A war in which special forces hit targets, collect and crunch intel, and in rapid fire, hit more. All directed by the ultimate killer app. A secret targeting engine that was able to finally find, fix, and finish our greatest enemy. December 2010, the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. The war against Osama bin Laden's al-Qaeda network is hotter than ever. As America's secret warriors employ a sophisticated new targeting strategy they call F3 EAD. Find, fix, finish, exploit, analyze, disseminate. And a terrorist targeting search engine that fuses intelligence and special forces with effective and deadly results. This is not a search engine surfed behind a desk, but one operated deep in hostile territory by sophisticated warriors looking to eliminate our enemies.
This is one piece of software that really deserves the designation killer app.
A near complete resurgence of the Taliban makes this no man's land the most dangerous place on earth.
There's a lot of people for whom it's very personal. And they're out there doing operations at night in places where if you mess up, you're going to die.
No place is more isolated or rabidly hostile than Khost, home to Camp Chapman and the frontline CIA station. A desert island in a sea of Taliban and al-Qaeda fighters.
Khost was one of the CIA facilities that sprung up along the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. These are frontline listening posts leading this hunt for Osama bin Laden.
Chapman is pretty dangerous because the Taliban fighters, Al-Qaeda, they're gonna kill them if they can, and they're gonna kill their family members if they can.
Heading this CIA station is a mother of three from Virginia, named Jennifer Matthews.
For someone like Jennifer Matthews to go to Khost meant giving up her entire family life for at least a year. She was a mom, and by day she was leading the hunt for Osama bin Laden.
Jenny, she looked at these terrorists, bin Laden in particular, as a threat to her children.
She was probably the greatest repository of information on al-Qaeda that existed in the CIA at the time, but she'd never been in a war zone.
She was intent on bringing justice to these terrorists who flew into the Trade Center. She was going the other.
Yet for 9 long years, Matthews and her CIA colleagues have had no credible leads on bin Laden. Now, finally they have what they believe is their biggest break yet in the hunt. A Jordanian physician named Humam al-Balawi has been taken into custody for posting threats on an al-Qaeda website. Under pressure from the feared Jordanian intelligence agency, the Mukhabarat, he has agreed to turn informant.
He had medical skills he could offer as a way of introducing himself into the Taliban and al-Qaeda.
For nearly a year, the Jordanians work with Matthews and the CIA to cultivate their asset and place him where he can infiltrate al-Qaeda.
Balawi drops into Pakistan in March of 2009. In late summer of 2009, he pops up again, says, "I'm back, and you'll never believe who I've met."
Balawi delivers a major intelligence coup in the form of a videotape that shows a meeting of senior al-Qaeda leaders.
The Jordanian asset not only claimed to be in the tent, he brought proof.
And then Balawi drops the real bombshell.
Balawi reports that he's become the personal physician to Ayman al-Zawahiri, al-Qaeda's number 2.
He presents as credible evidence very detailed physical description, including scars, medical history, things that the CIA could easily corroborate.
They thought perhaps he would lead to Osama. People were hungry for a victory. And the only place they could find one was in this particular asset provided by the Jordanians.
If after all this time you actually see somebody that you think is going to put you in touch with bin Laden, my God.
The CIA immediately briefs President Obama on this exciting new development and fast-tracks a plan to meet with their double agent at Camp Chapman on December 30th.
There's a tradition of hospitality in the Arab world, and the CIA knows this. Turns out that Balawi had just turned 32, just a few days before, and what a nice surprise when he walks into the base, then to have a birthday cake ready for him.
Tensions are high as they wait for Balawi, especially as the appointed meeting time comes and goes.
They're sitting in Afghanistan, salivating, waiting for a chance to really download everything the guy has to say.
Finally, after years, you had a guy who had access to the most senior leadership of the Al-Qaeda.
So finally he's on his way. They're looking for this car to arrive, and he's such an important informant that no one can risk him being seen by a Taliban spy. And so a decision is made to allow Balawi to cross through the security checks without being searched. And his car finally stops inside the CIA compound inside the base. And he gets out of the car.
Balawi shuffles awkwardly toward a group of 14 CIA and Jordanian operatives, as if hurt.
And he starts hobbling around the front of the car. Then he begins to chant the words in Arabic, "There is no God but God. There is no God but God." And this is the moment when everyone freezes and realizes that something very bad is about to happen.
As Balawi reaches into his pocket, Matthew's security officers level their weapons.
You're standing there with a gun, and you're telling the guy to get his hand out of his pocket.
Finally, Balawi, when he sees he's trapped and he can't go any further, hits a detonator on his wrist.
When the explosion happened, it turned to dust, screams, and shouts. We looked up while we were sitting in our room. There were announcements on the speakers. Don't come outside.
This is a bomb that's no ordinary suicide vest. It's C4, it's military explosive. It's all coated in, hundreds and thousands of little pieces of shrapnel. And it was a devastating scene when people got there with bodies all over the ground, people wounded, people dying.
Including Jennifer Matthews.
The agency contacted the immediate family, and they said they're trying to find her husband. And I knew right away, try and find the husband. And then we saw it on TV.
Well, the more we learn about the suicide bombing that killed 7 CIA officers and contractors in Afghanistan, the worse it looks.
It is tragic and difficult to understand how this all happened.
10 people are dead, including 7 of the CIA's most valuable bin Laden operatives. The attack ranks among the most devastating in agency history.
They hadn't lost this many people in a single day since 1983. It was the worst thing that happened in 25 years.
I lost a great friend, patriot, and won't miss her.
She was a friend. When she was killed, she had pretty close to 14 years experience on this target. Clearly a irreplaceable asset for the United States.
From the grave, Balawi's martyrdom video twists the knife in the heart of the CIA. While they were baking him a birthday cake, he was making his own preparations.
Get you, CIA team. Inshallah, will you get you down? Look, this is for you. It's not watch, it's detonator.
It gets worse. Balawi reveals his attack has been planned directly by Al-Qaeda's Shura Leadership Council. In other words, Osama bin Laden himself.
To kill as much as I can, inshallah. This is my dua. I go to the Firdaus al-A'la paradise, and you will be sent to the hell.
The agency seemed to be getting close. In fact, it was all a mirage and a trick being played on them by the other side.
Yeah, it was the low point. My opinion was we're never going to, it's just going to be blind luck if we get the guy.
For those inside the hunt for Osama bin Laden, Camp Chapman is the lowest point since the day that changed America forever. A day that would chart the course for a president and a future president.
No matter how long it takes, America will find you and we will bring you to justice.
9/11 was a tectonic shift for this country. President Bush reacted with outrage. His reaction was really very much in tune with the national mood.
It will take a real change.
For the young state senator from Illinois, his reaction was shockingly out of step with the national mood. He wanted to learn from this episode. He wanted to address what he felt were the root causes of anti-Americanism.
And that is why I am running for President of the United States of America.
Obama entered the race for president as the leading anti-war candidate.
I accept your nomination for presidency of the United States.
But Obama makes a surprising campaign promise.
That if he received actionable intelligence about a legitimate target inside Pakistan, and if Pakistan wouldn't act, he would.
It was a terrible mistake to fail to act when we had a chance to take out an al-Qaeda leadership meeting.
Obama was ridiculed for his promise to go after al-Qaeda targets inside Pakistan, but as soon as he became president, he began to act on it. Obama launched more drone strikes inside Pakistan in his first 2 years than President Bush had authorized in his 2 terms in office. Obama effectively had his finger on the trigger of a sniper rifle. So if bin Laden...
about all issues.
Bin Laden went with Osama to Afghanistan and managed to distinguish himself in a famous battle against the Soviets.
In 1987, my father was there, Osama was there, I was there. This was in Jaji, in the Tora Bora mountain. We were fighting against the Russian special forces, just 18, 20 meters sometime, face to face. Allahu Akbar. This was the first battle, as I know, bin Laden joined himself. All of us were very frightened.
They went into battle before they were fully trained and they didn't have enough ammunition.
We have lost 17 of the Arab fighters, yes, of the Arab Mujahideen. More than 80 were injured. But we did our job in that battle, and don't tell me how, because I don't know. If you have seen the interview with bin Laden, always keeping his Kalashnikov, this weapon, bin Laden took it in that battle in 1987.
Transformed by the miraculous battle, bin Laden is ready to build an Arab-only fighting force, a terrorist army that can be deployed not just in Afghanistan, but all over the world. In the summer of 1988, he forms Al-Qaeda.
Bin Laden saw himself as a divine enforcer, sort of the action arm of the effort to attack the infidel regimes, anything that stood in the way of the creation of a caliphate, the perfect Islamist society, was a legitimate target.
3 years later, bin Laden is back home in Saudi Arabia when Saddam Hussein's forces invade and occupy Kuwait, posing a major threat to the Saudi kingdom.
I was in Saudi Arabia when the war starting against Saddam Hussein. Osama bin Laden wrote to the king that time, King Fahd, that he wanted to join the war against Saddam troops without letting the Americans and the Western armies to come into the rest of the Gulf.
Bin Laden considered himself and his men as responsible for the defeat of the Soviets in Afghanistan and for the collapse of the entire Soviet Union. So now he wanted to go to war against Saddam's forces in order to prevent the buildup of infidel armies in Saudi Arabia and the Holy Lands throughout the Middle East.
Bin Laden's request is firmly rejected by the Saudis.
For the first time in my life, I saw the anger in his face. I saw his sadness. I saw his fury. And I used to see him free in Afghanistan, riding horses. But in Saudi Arabia, he was like a falcon in a cage.
Bin Laden does so much barking against the regime that he gets his citizenship revoked and moves on to the Sudan, where he begins planning his attacks on the West.
In Sudan, Hudayfa Azzam claims to have been a witness to a fateful meeting between bin Laden, suspected 9/11 architect Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and his young nephew, Ramzi Youssef.
I was that time in that meeting when Khalid Sheikh Mohammed came and he whispered in Sheikh Osama's ear. Within a few minutes, a guy came in. It was Ramzi Youssef. And he said, beside Osama bin Laden, and started explaining there is no security at the American airports. And without spending a lot of money, we can attack the United States by hijacking airplane and crashing them inside the cities of the United States.
Within months, Youssef would follow through with an attempt to topple the Twin Towers. If Azzam's claims are true, the real architect of 9/11 may have been the man convicted of the first World Trade Center attack, Ramzi Youssef. U.S. intelligence links bin Laden to the '93 Trade Center bombing, as well as a 1995 truck bombing in Saudi Arabia that kills 5 Americans.
Pressure mounts on the Sudanese government to kick bin Laden out. So he moves on to Afghanistan, where he reunites with Ayman al-Zawahiri and actually holds a press conference to declare war on the United States of America. This is music to the ears of Michael Scheuer and Gary Schroen, the CIA's two main bin Laden hunters.
Those happy days are here again. The agency knew Afghanistan cold. We had a ready network of human assets who could help us find bin Laden.
They were ready to kill or capture bin Laden on several occasions.
It was really, I think, the first time the agency had gone after a person rather than a country or a large group.
Scheuer's team, including a young Jennifer Matthews, was working around the clock tracking bin Laden, and had become so obsessed that they were literally ridiculed by some of their superiors.
The old boys called my officers the Manson family. It was hard to convince senior people born and bred in the Cold War that a guy with a long beard living in the mountains of Afghanistan could pose a threat to the United States.
One of the problems that we faced was we didn't have direct authority to kill bin Laden.
They couldn't get the White House and the CIA to take action even when they had bin Laden in their crosshairs.
George Tenet came down to talk to my officers, and my chief targeter told him to his face that he and the White House were going to get thousands of Americans killed if they didn't take advantage of the opportunities they had to capture Osama bin Laden.
5 years after the first World Trade Center bombing, simultaneous attacks on the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania killed 224, including 12 Americans.
Finally, the United States was ready and willing to take a shot.
We had information both from a human source and from a signals intelligence source that indicated that bin Laden may be in Host. And so the president authorized a cruise missile strike in hope of killing him.
There were indications that the Pakistani intelligence service, the ISI, had tipped him off. But bin Laden may have just gotten lucky.
I was the first one to interview him from media after the missile attacks. He said, by the grace of Almighty Allah, I was hundreds of kilometers away from there.
Of course, Clinton was involved in the Monica Lewinsky affair and was accused of wagging the dog, trying to distract the American people from his scandal. It was a disaster all around, and maybe the worst effect was that it drove bin Laden underground. It made him a lot harder to find.
Schroen's team would give the United States one more opportunity to kill bin Laden in May of 1999.
5 consecutive nights in the third week of May, we knew where bin Laden was sleeping in Kandahar City.
We'd seen actual walking pictures of Osama bin Laden. He was clearly identifiable as a tall guy with a cane, a white robe, followed by several of his minions.
Cruise missiles stand at the ready. A military official anonymously quoted in the 9/11 Commission report calls it a fat pitch, a home run. Bin Laden should have been a dead man. Instead, Schroen's superior calls off the strike.
For Scheuer, this is the final straw.
I said to stick it in his. That was enough to get me fired from that job.
And so Scheuer was fired and Schroen moved on. But soon enough, the CIA would be calling.
September 11th of 2001. Before the dust has settled in Manhattan, the hunt for bin Laden is back on with a vengeance.
The United States was going after bin Laden, but they were going to go through the Taliban to get at him. Michael Scheuer and Gary Schroen were the first to hear their phones ring.
9/11, at about 11 o'clock, the fellow who had replaced me called and said, would you come back and work with us tomorrow?
I got a call from Hofer Black, basically saying, come in to see me tomorrow. He said, I want you to take the first team into Afghanistan.
I want justice, dead or alive.
My instructions were find bin Laden, kill him, cut off his head, put it on dry ice and ship it back to Washington. So things had changed.
Schroen's mission is to link U.S. Special Forces with Afghan forces on the ground to help them identify al-Qaeda and Taliban targets.
The tribals led the CIA guys into southern Afghanistan toward Kandahar.
American Special Forces used lasers to steer bombs down on al-Qaeda and Taliban targets. They rained hell on them from above the clouds with incredible precision. The United States steamrolled through the Taliban. At the time, it seemed to be one of the most remarkable achievements in military history.
Bin Laden's al-Qaeda camps are obliterated. Discovery's cameras ventured deep inside Taliban-controlled territory here in Kandahar to capture all that remains of a key Bin Laden training camp today. But Bin Laden himself manages to elude American bombs, weathering massive assaults in December 2001 on a cave complex in the White Mountains called Tora Bora.
This destruction continued for around 22 or 23 days, and not even a bird could cross that place due to bombings.
Americans are glued to their televisions, watching the bombing campaign and thinking the end had come for Osama bin Laden.
There were Marines there that were dying to go into Tora Bora to get Osama bin Laden, but our generals were not eager to have them do so.
Instead, the U.S. military chooses to rely on local militias to seal the Pakistan border, but their allegiances can be bought.
Bin Laden and company made their way out of the mountains and into Pakistan. And once he got into Pakistan, it was game over.
Bin Laden became a ghost while for all those years, America moved on to other ventures.
After Tora Bora, we began to pay less attention to Afghanistan and started to plan on Iraq. And in that regard, I think we shortchanged Afghanistan. We took
seized when they ransacked hideouts, had been thrown into this enormous database.
Nobody ever really disappears. You're looking at literally millions of pieces of data, and some of it makes sense and most of it doesn't. Most of it's garbage. But you never know when a piece might lead you to the right guy.
So when we talk about the trail to Abbottabad, we're talking about the development of a sophisticated targeting engine that pulls together all of these scraps of information, turns them all into data. In other words, to act so swiftly on intelligence that the enemy doesn't even know that they've learned it. In 2004, a company called Palantir developed a software that really deserved the designation killer app. Palantir is named after a stone in The Lord of the Rings that gives someone powers to see great distances. The software that developed from this project turned our special operations soldiers into deadly, effective hunters. By the time this targeting engine is introduced in the field, you have SEALs and Delta Force operators who had honed their skills through thousands of raids in 2 wars.
These are the best of the best going after the worst of the worst.
A force that has been well-tested, well-trained, and has undertaken hundreds of missions, often dozens in one single night in places like Iraq and Afghanistan.
Another major development, of course, was the drone, which enabled the military not just to target the enemy, but to maintain an unblinking eye in the sky.
Overhead, persistent analysis that gives the United States a greater eye on what's happening on the ground.
Now the CIA has the capability to mount these caps with optics so sophisticated they can observe from standoff locations. They can maintain these platforms out of restricted airspace, like Pakistan's.
July 2009. Special Forces Commander William McRaven signs a secret agreement with new CIA Director Leon Panetta, outlining expanded cooperation between the CIA and Special Forces.
So just as this new president was trying to infuse the hunt for bin Laden with more urgency, there was formal unity at the highest levels for this intelligence special ops fusion. From the ashes of 9/11, the right weapon had evolved. And just as this perfect weapon had evolved over time, there emerged the clue, the missing piece of the puzzle to finding bin Laden, the identity of his courier.
From 2001 through 2007, a series of high-level takedowns point to the existence of a mysterious al-Qaeda courier known by the alias of Ahmed al-Kuwaiti. Information mined from interrogations and fed into the ever-evolving search engine determines that the Kuwaiti is indeed a key figure in the hunt, if only the CIA can determine his real name.
The agency will say only that the information came from a third country. But in 2007, they finally learned the real name of the Kuwaiti. Ibrahim Saeed Ahmed. Now they were on. A real man has a real history. He has family, he has connections, he can be investigated. So they finally had something to work with. By tracking his family and by making use of the growing sophistication of this software, the targeting engine, they could begin chipping away.
June 2010. The CIA pinpoints the location of Ahmed's cell phone.
Finding his cell phone meant that they could find him and watch him. And when they tracked him to this compound, it provoked a great deal of curiosity at Langley.
The security measures, the fact that certain members of the family never came outside, the presence of guard dogs, which is very unusual in that part of the world.
Ahmed and his brother appear unusually secretive.
They were engaged in a high degree of OPSEC, operational security. And we had a very clear sense that they were serving as emissaries for somebody within the Al-Qaeda network.
The brothers would only turn on their telephones after driving an hour away from the compound. They were very careful in their recorded conversations, even lying to close family members about where they were living. And then a brief exchange in one of Ibrahim Ahmed's phone calls led the CIA to believe that he was still working for Al-Qaeda. It had been over a year since the president had informally gathered his intelligence chiefs in his Oval Office and told them to make Osama bin Laden the #1 priority. And now the CIA had come across this curious compound in Abbottabad. Obama instructed them to keep a close hold on the information and to keep Pakistan out of the loop. If Osama was there, the president intended to make good on his campaign promise to take unilateral action inside Pakistan. He was going to get bin Laden.
August 2010. Between Sentinel drone feeds, satellite imagery, and spies on the ground, the CIA has nearly 24/7 surveillance on a find in Abbottabad, Pakistan, the suspected hideout of Osama bin Laden.
There instructs the CIA director to begin preparing options for taking out this target. Panetta and his deputy, Mike Morrell, decided on the spot that if anybody was going to do this raid, it was going to be JSOC.
JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, has proven itself over the course of thousands of missions worldwide and grown in numbers to a force of 4,000 men and women. Cooperating with CIA and equipped with a new targeting engine, they've evolved into a virtual fifth branch of the armed forces.
No force in history is better equipped to take out a lethal target anytime, anywhere in the world.
Close-up, personal, brutal warfare, the ugliest portions of that. These are the guys that will go in and get that done for this country.
By March, there really was no better indication that the pacer was bin Laden. The CIA had concluded that even though they couldn't tell if the pacer was bin Laden, that the compound definitely held a high-value target. So Obama instructs Admiral McRaven to begin rehearsing a raid.
The raid would take place in denied space, 150 miles inside the Pakistani border.
McRaven selected a dream team of special operators from SEAL Team 6's Red Squadron. Some of those selected had been involved already in secret missions inside Pakistan.
McRaven's plan is to insert 2 Black Hawks directly to the target, while 2 refueling Chinooks set down at Kaladaka on the bank of the Indus River, and a 3rd quick-reaction Chinook waits just inside the Afghan border in case something goes wrong.
McRaven's group rehearsed the mission at Fort Bragg down in North Carolina, attacking a complete mock-up of the compound.
Speed, surprise, and violence of action. You go in when you are carrying the hammer.
If the team was to get bogged down on the compound, searching for bin Laden, if he was hiding behind a fake door, or if he had a hiding place, if they overstayed their welcome and the Pakistanis responded with enough force, the admiral's position was that at that point his men would hunker down and wait for Washington to negotiate a solution.
But Obama instructs McRaven to have his men prepared to fight their way out.
If things went south, Obama preferred to deal with the ramifications, knowing that the raiding party was home safe.
April 27th, Red Squadron arrives in Jalalabad, Afghanistan, the final staging area for the mission.
As the in Iran in 1980, the failure of which had destroyed Jimmy Carter's presidency.
These operations go one or two ways, zero or hero.
There was no one piece of intelligence that was a silver bullet.
The president ended the meeting by promising to give a decision the following morning. In his mind, it was still strictly a 50-50 proposition. That night, he paced in the treaty room for hours before he went to bed.
April 29th, Obama is scheduled to fly to the south to view tornado damage.
That morning, as he was preparing to board Marine One, the president summoned Dennis McDonough, Tom Donilon, and his chief of staff, Bill Daley, to the diplomatic room. And looking out over the South Lawn and the Washington Monument, he said to them, "It's a go. We're going to do the raid. Prepare the directives."
I remember, Saturday basically leaving home and saying to my kids, I'm not going to be home much the next few days, and not being able to say why.
That Saturday evening, the president upheld his reputation for cool by being funny at the annual White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Mahalo.
And the following morning maintained the appearance of normalcy at the White House by going out to shoot 9 holes of golf.
Everybody understood the importance of not departing from the normal, not blowing the opportunity.
He returned to the Situation Room at 2:30 that afternoon, where Leon Panetta's face would be up on the big screen from his headquarters in Langley. The mission's real commander, Admiral Bill McRaven, would take charge of the mission from his command post in Jalalabad. It's a moonless night. The 2 stealth Blackhawks were loaded with 23 SEALs, a Pashtun translator, and a Belgian Malinois named Cairo. They take off from Jalalabad, and Operation Neptune Spear is underway.
Midnight, Jalalabad.
The 2 stealth Blackhawks are flying fast and low over Pakistan, and McRaven has the capability of monitoring exactly what the Pakistanis are doing in response. So far, they aren't doing anything.
4 p.m., the White House.
The president and his advisors can finally see the Blackhawks from the Sentinel feed overhead, moving in over the target. As they watched in the first seconds of the mission, they knew that something had gone wrong right away. Both of the Blackhawks were supposed to move off after roping the soldiers into the compound. Instead, one of them appeared to have crashed. They were horrified. Immediately, what flashed into their minds was Black Hawk Down, or worse,
Down.
When the Black Hawk went down, it was clear that it was not planned, and I think there was just a collective holding of breath.
The crash fan out, like clockwork. 9 head to the main house, 3 to the guest house.
The courier Ahmed is shot immediately twice in the face. His wife is wounded in the shoulder.
SEALs begin to clear the guest house room by room. Moving on the main house, they receive a burst of gunfire.
They were inclined at that point to shoot. Abrar, the courier's brother, and his wife Bushra are shot dead in the first floor bedroom.